I'm Dr. Corey Howard. I'm a general internist, anti-aging functional and regenerative medicine specialist. I do a lot of hormone therapy. I'm in private practice, and I've been in private practice for the past 27 years. So I have a lot of clinical experience. Also trained as a gastroenterologist in digestive diseases and nutrition. And really the bottom line is I'm here today to really give information that I hope is useful. There's a lot of information online, and how do you sort and sift through it is really a challenge. So I'm going to try to make it easy. Today, we're going to talk about, I think, a very important topic, which is on habits and mindset. I will say that if you have not read Atomic Habits by James Clear, I believe that's his name, then that is the book to go to. I have gone through stuff, and I was thinking, maybe I could become an expert in habits. And I said, no, I don't think that's really possible when somebody else has already done the right kind of research that makes sense. But I'm going to take a crack at explaining a few parts that I think will be helpful to you. And hopefully after this time, you'll get a little bit better information. Now, we want to talk a little bit about the science of habits, right? And really about what that means and what that's all about. Because the science really has to do with these behaviors that eventually become automatic. Now, we've all gone through this in trying to have a habit and break a habit and maybe say, well, how long does it have? How long do we have for a habit? Well, those are some questions that I'm going to give you some answers to today. But generally, the habit formation process has to do with a few different stages. Now, in this book, it'll be slightly different, but basically there's something that you want to do, a trigger, a cue, a routine or a behavior, and then some type of reward. And in reverse, when you're breaking something down, it's going to be the opposite, basically, finding something that's not good and not make it easy and make it not rewarding. But we'll just kind of focus on that habit forming process. And so the routine or behavior is the thing that you really want to do. And you want to do it over and over and over again as much as possible. And interestingly, just right at that point, you want to discuss, well, we have these things, but we'll talk about how that happens, but how long does it happen? I mean, what do I have to do? How many times do I have to do it? How long is it going to take? And you may read online, it takes 15 days, 30 days, and things like that. But the reality is it takes as many times as it takes until you can do it. And the reason is because how it's done. So basically, there's two major parts of the brain where this occurs. One is called the basal ganglia. It so happens that the basal ganglia controls motor functions in your body. So if you have problems in the basal ganglia, you develop some diseases like Parkinson's disease. But that area is crucial for it. And the other one is the prefrontal cortex. This is kind of the conscious decision-making part of your brain. So you've got these two areas and they've got to connect. But all of the wires that you need are not there. And that is what you have to do. You literally have to get through the process to allow the brain to wire and send messages down your neurons inside of the brain in order to make those connections. It's not like in the brain, there's going to be one section, like a filing cabinet where everything goes. It actually doesn't go like that. When something happens, you literally send signals all over the brain to this section, that section, this section, and then they connect and come together to form the thought or whatever it is that you want to do. And so if you're trying to create a habit, we have to find the path to do that. So the first thing you want to do is have it start forming. And that's occurs when you repeat something over and over again. So like if you go out to start running, now it's different at different ages, but if you go out to start running, the beginning is, I want to go run. Great. It's not, I want to go run 35 miles or whatever, right? 35 or 37? Or
37, yeah.
37 miles or a marathon in my case. A little bit less. You go out and you say, I want to put one foot in front of the other, because that's where a lot of us are. A lot of us don't have the habit of getting up in the morning and doing exercise because we've associated with something. So I was literally talking to people today in my practice specifically about this. So a gentleman who's in his 70s doesn't want to exercise. And I'm trying to explain, well, how are you going to be when you're 75 or 80 or 85 or 95, assuming you make it that long. And so you want to lay down the groundwork to do that, but we have to form a habit. So the guy's like, I don't want to exercise. Well, I can't make people do what they don't want to do. But if we were to say, how do we get a successful habit going? I'd say take your shoes out and your clothes the night before, put them on in the morning, get into the habit of doing that every day, maybe going outside, start with a walk, and eventually building that up into the habit. And then you can work on the level of intensity that you want, whatever it is. So if you're looking to do a race or something, you can do it. Believe it or not, walking a mile is hard for some people. Running a mile is a little bit harder. Running a 5K is even harder, and so on and so forth. So this new behavior has to be related to the cues that you give it. And then you have to make it more automatic over time, like I said. So you do that by putting things out and getting them ready. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then you have to maintain it somehow. And the way that you maintain it is by having regular activity over. So you have frequency, which is something that you're going to repeat over and over again. So you have a high chance of doing it. And the other thing, which is literally the key to achieving your goals, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're running a race, whether it's just your daily work, is consistency. If you do not do this consistently, like go to the gym once a month and think your biceps are going to get bigger, that's just not going to happen, right? So you have to do it regularly. The question becomes, how regularly do you have to do it? Well, if you're forming a habit, the more regularly you do it, the quicker it's going to happen. You still have to undergo the adaptation process where the first few weeks are very difficult. You don't see any changes, for a month or so. But after that, with consistent action, you can actually see the results, and people will notice it too. And the last thing are the rewards. Now, the rewards aren't, if I go out for a run, I can eat a candy bar. Well, that's going to do some harm to you later on, but, that'll help you release some dopamine, which will eventually make you feel good. And if you do it enough times, if you ate a candy bar every time after you ran, then you would associate running with feeling good, and therefore you'd eat the candy bar every time. And that would be that habit. Now, of course, then if that's the case, then you have to associate the fact that the candy bar, whenever you think of a candy bar, it has to be filled with maggots. And so now you're not going to eat that, because now every time you think of the candy bar, it's filled with maggots and you're going to get grossed out, unless you like those things. But generally, most people don't. But that's just a kind of joking way to say, how to break a habit. But when we're breaking a habit, which is the opposite process, we have to do a few things. We have to identify what it is that we're doing. And sometimes it's not noticeable to you unless it's damaging you in one way or the other. For example, your belly's getting a lot bigger. Your spouse or significant other is complaining of something that you're doing, like leaving your clothes out all the time, for example. That can be considered a bad habit and just bad hygiene. It's not good for your local environment. It's not good for yourself in terms of just clutter. It's hard to think, but it's also, other people may not like it too. And so that could be something that you do. So you've identified the fact that you don't want to leave your clothes laying around as much as you'd like to leave your clothes laying around. Because I know a lot of guys, they do this. They have a pile of clothes that are partially worn. Like, I just wore that shirt just for a little bit. It's probably just fine. And then you get to it like later on and you're like, yeah, it's not too bad. So there you go. Second use. But generally, that's not a good thing to do. So then you want to replace the routine with something else. So if you want to get rid of something, it's almost like we were thinking of a disc player in the past, before we had all these platforms. You'd have a bunch of discs in a carousel. and you can pick which ones you have. But if you want to get rid of one, such as a bad behavior, you have to replace it with something else. So if you're going to get rid of a behavior, you want to actually replace it with another thing that you're going to do. So substitute that undesirable behavior with something more positive that's associated with a cue and some type of reward for yourself. And again, the reward in this case could be telling yourself you've done the right thing, or giving yourself an extra few minutes, or, you could also connect it to some other stuff like, you've exercised for the last 6 months, you've lost a bunch of weight, you bought some new clothes, things like that. The other part is, we discussed a little bit, is about mindfulness. And mindfulness has to do, in this particular instance, of just being aware of the actions that you have. A lot of us walk around pretty mindless these days. We're walking around and just doing things, but we're not really focusing on what our surroundings are. It's all about me. Whereas we could be focusing on what else is going around. And in fact, a lot of life is, as a little bit of a segue there, a lot of life is related to understanding the environment and what we can do for other people too. And I think these kinds of platforms, when we're talking online, trying to get out a message to help people, there'll be others that will think that they know it better, or they could say it better, or whatever. So this is my own personal reality. But being mindful is mindful of your surroundings, what you're doing, what the changes could be. So in this particular instance, you become mindful of the fact that your clothes might be in a pile or in a place that is not necessarily what other people around you might like. And so you're mindful enough to then start to help yourself make a change. And it could be gradual too. It doesn't have to be, all or none response. Sometimes we live in this all or none world. Like, I'll give you an example of that would be, I want to go run. And if I can't run 6 miles this morning, I'm not going to run at all. And then you notice that there's a little sprinkle outside, and there's lightning like 175 miles away. And you're like, it's kind of close. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it today. So I think I'll just have breakfast and carb load for tomorrow. We get into these things. Does that ever happen to you?
This morning is the best example. I woke up and immediately my mind, because it was drizzling outside, immediately my mind was like, you don't have to. You had a plan for 6 miles today. And I was just talking myself out of all these reasons. And all I did, as following your protocol, I had everything picked out before. So I was already, before I even could make a conscious decision, I was dressed. I was in the car. I'm driving there. It's pouring rain now. I just got out of my car and I was like, look, let me just try to get a mile. And mile turned into 3 and I was done. It wasn't my 6 that I planned for, but the idea of just getting it done versus I've done the other option, which is I get to the running spot and I'm like, turn the car around, go home, and carb load for tomorrow. But yeah, I've been on both sides.
I'm not going to lie. I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Although I've also done the opposite where I'm like, it's not so bad out. My bike's carbon and I'm on, rubber. So if I don't think I'll get struck by lightning. But yeah, that wasn't so smart. There was a few times I had to get picked up far away from my house, 50 miles away. And I'm like, okay, can somebody get me? I cannot make it home. But some practical applications to this habit forming process. First of all, I just want to make sure that what it's all about, which is really thinking about it in terms of keeping it simple. But find out what it is that you want to do. You have to think about what are the habits that you want. And, the best thing to do is just write them down. Write down these things and figure out what it is that you might want to change. What would you like to improve? You can also do something called habit stacking. This is a James Clear concept. It's kind of the same concept as what we call as chunking. Chunking is another concept of when there's too much material, how do you break it down? So you chunk it down into smaller segments. Same thing with habits, but in this particular instance, habit stacking has to do with tying a habit that you want to a habit that you already have. So if you already have the habit of waking up in the morning and getting up and going to exercise, but you don't have the habit of, say, you want to tie it to a really good, nutritious meal, even though you're doing these exercises, because believe me, there's a lot of people that, go out and exercise and feel like that's a free-for-all for whatever you want to eat, whenever you want to eat it. And I'm not advocating perfect eating all the time. I'm just saying, you want to tie the habit of being mindful of the nutrition that you're going to put in your body to fuel yourself for what it is that you want to do that day, the next day, and so on, then putting in a nutritious meal after the habit of already exercising is a good thing. And that would be an example of what's called habit stacking.
Yeah, for example, I didn't have the habit of taking my supplements every morning. Like whatever supplement it was, I usually just let it go by. But I have the same habit every morning where I have my water, fill it up, and I put electrolytes in it. So basically what I started to do is I just put out the night before, I pre-packaged all my pills so that they were right next to my electrolyte powder. So just grab my electrolyte powder, grab my pills, put my electrolyte in, and then take my pills.
So a good example of habit stacking, although we will focus on supplements at one point on what supplements to take or not take. And it's not just what I take, by the way. As a physician, follow what I take. I'll sell you what I take kind of thing. But it has to be individualized to your actual needs. I'm a big fan of the science behind supplementation, which is actually checking for what you might need as much as possible without spending too much money. Some testing is more expensive, so occasionally a shotgun approach is not a bad idea. But, you can also overdo stuff too. So sometimes we supplement and it actually can affect the absorption of some of the other things that you take. So just for our future reference, let's make sure that we do a full-on supplement podcast for people, and I hope that would be enjoyable for others. But I like the idea of a habit stacking in this particular instance. Great example of something you're already doing and tying it to. So thank you, James Clear. That was great. Behavioral therapy is something that can help you make changes. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. That's like you sit there in front of somebody, they ask a bunch of questions, try to tag it to what you're doing and help you through that process. Some people need that. I'm a fan of really trying to empower others to want to do it themselves or work with friends that can help, like build little groups of people that can be motivating to you to do the right thing. You'll see later on what we're going to talk about is that it is very important to surround yourself with the kind of people that have the same kind of mindset. So I'm going to get into mindset in just a second. Another thing is self-monitoring. So if you're not tracking it, you don't know what you're doing. How many push-ups did I do today? How many miles did I run? How fast did I run them in? What were the conditions? What was my heart rate? What can I do better? What I do the night before? What is going to happen for the future? And that, by the way, that is not just for racing. This is literally for your life. So I want people to start thinking of training as a thing that you do for your life. You train every day to live the best life that you possibly can. You figure out what it is that you want to do, where you want to be, how much money you want to make, who you want to be with. I can't tell you all those things are going to happen for you, but I can tell you that your chances of getting those things are much better if you develop the habits in the right direction and you really start to think about it. Because if you don't, then the problem is that later on at some point in time, you'll run into the falls, and the falls will lead you to some form of disaster. So forming the habits right now and making your own decisions is the way to go. The last thing, which I thought was very interesting when I started looking into this topic a little bit more, is your environmental design. And the environmental design is altering your environment to optimize your own personal ability to be successful. Now, in this book, in Atomic Habits, he talked about Japanese and altering their workspaces to optimize, so they can make the most amount of things in a certain period of time. I'm talking about helping you clear your mind in your space so that you can accomplish the things that you want to accomplish in the time that you want to. For example, on your phone, turn it off or put it on Do Not Disturb. Give yourself a certain period of time. Now, I was watching something online the other day, It was like the Japanese, I do not know the word, but the Japanese have a certain amount of time, 25 minutes on, so they can take 5-minute breaks and, increase efficiency during that period of time. Let's move on to mindset, because mindset is extremely important. And I actually want to read this because I think this is a great definition of what mindset really is. So mindset refers to the established set of attitudes and beliefs that individuals hold about themselves and the world around them, and it plays a crucial role in shaping behaviors, emotional responses, and overall health. So refers to the established set of attitudes and beliefs that you have. Beliefs. Well, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are right. That is a fact. So your beliefs govern everything. And in fact, your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits, and your habits are the thing that drive the rest of your life, and they ultimately become your character. So the way that you think ultimately becomes your character. And I know some people, they talk about that and they're like, that's not true. That is totally true. Because if you talk to yourself in a bad way all the time, you're going to see problems. It's like this. Think about this. If you talk to me like you talk to yourself, would we be friends? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. A lot of times the answer is, I don't think so. But you would never talk to somebody like that, the way that you talk to yourself. You're always giving yourself a hard time very frequently. Now part of that, your mindset is that, you have this fixed mindset, that you believe that your abilities, your intelligence, that's unchangeable. That's what it is. You're going to go ahead, and that's the way you think. Well, I don't think that is going to bring you to where you really, really need to be, right? And so we want to look at what is called a growth mindset. And this is in your belief that your abilities, your intelligence, those can all be developed. They can all be changed. They can all be thought through and improved over time. And it's not static. And in fact, the educational system used to be a fixed mindset. They teach you this, they teach you that, this is how it's done. But today we all know that that's not true, because we can look on ChatGPT or any other platform and find out a way to get around whatever it is that we want to do. And so the growth mindset is really going to be important, and it really has a lot to do with your physical self, your physical health, right? In terms of stress management, your healthy lifestyle choices, and how you are resilient to things. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. So in terms of stress management, we're looking at a growth mindset to help you decrease the adrenal gland function of producing too much cortisol, so that you're not always stressed, that you can't be perfect all the time. You can't do this. Everybody has to work hard. If you've watched, some of the biggest and most successful people in the world, Tom Brady, for example, will tell you, you've got to work hard every single day. Ledecky, when everything that she has touched, she had the top 20 times in the Olympics. She has all those records for just even one event. So nobody's coming even close. But it's because if you were to go in, and I think even Michael Phelps might have said this in the past, if you're in the pool an hour extra every day than everybody else, over time, that leads to years more experience than somebody else in the pool.
During his prime, he worked out 7 days a week with that mindset of even if the best guy, his competitor, was doing 6 days, he was always getting that extra day. And I take that mindset even with building a company or doing anything. It's like there's blocks. My favorite time is the 2-week break from like the week before Christmas until New Year's. Everybody shuts off. And in a lot of ways, I think that's where you can make some really good headway. And that opportunity pops up at all times, realistically.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, come up with a lot of good content during Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah.
Depends on what you want to have out there.
Yeah.
But putting in that extra time is extremely important. There's no question about that. And really, looking at the physical health part of this growth mindset, healthy lifestyle choices, really helps you start to think about, how can I make improvements? What do I need to do? Because you know that if you make better choices and have better habits, that you can be more successful. And finally, looking at recovery and resiliency in terms of, healthier you are, the more you can get through some of the difficult times, because there will be bumps in the road, no matter what you do.
What is the mindset behind, like, I think about this whenever I don't work out first thing in the morning, the day just tackles me half the time. I don't feel like I have the willpower or the same level of vigor to attack the day. What is that from a scientific perspective? Like, what is the difference between my energetic state when I do that versus when I don't?
I mean, the obvious point is that you're supercharging your system in the morning. You're getting it going. You're increasing your catecholamines, you're increasing your dopamine levels, you're increasing all of the hormones that you can in the beginning, as long as you've been doing it on a regular basis, because it could backfire too. So say, you're not really trained and you go ahead and run 5 miles, and then you're gassed for the rest of the day. So I'm not saying in that category. In this particular one, you've broken your habit, and now your body's like, yo, what's up? What are you doing to me today? And so there's a little bit of an issue there. And so the best thing to do is to recognize it and either, just go with it for the rest of the day, or, decide that, this is a time that I'm going to have something to do in the afternoon. I'm going to go to the gym in the afternoon. I'm going to make up for that. Probably won't affect your sleep negatively, like some people think. But, better to do something than to do nothing. And it's hard to do something every day. I can't tell you that I'm waking up every day and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm ready. I'd like to think like that. Maybe I used to think like that. But right now, you wake up and you're like, my back's a little tweaked, and, my knee got a little creak in it today or whatever. But so you still do it. Now, you may not do it with the same level of intensity, but you get it done. And so just getting it done is a adage that a good friend of mine has always said. When go out west and wake up in the morning, he's like, just get it done. Enjoy it, don't enjoy it, but just get it done. And so I'm telling you, just get it done. But if you don't do it in the morning, you feel kind of crappy because of those other reasons, maybe you want to consider doing a little bit more later. Other things, a growth mindset really helps with coping with adversity. Gives you a much more positive mindset, belief that you can do it. This kind of self-efficacy where you can really say, I can succeed. So it's really giving this positivity, and it's something that you have to develop over time. It's not like everybody just is born that way necessarily, but you can definitely grow into that. Believe it or not, it also helps you with emotional regularity. And so means that your emotions could be regulated a little bit better, so you don't get these highs and lows all the time. You're feeling much better about yourself. You're feeling much better about your environment, and then something happens, but you're still able to kind of come back because you know that tomorrow's another day. I still I said this before, and I'll reference it again into the Atomic Habits because I didn't remember that's where it was. But quite frankly, I think other people have said it too, which is just improve a little bit every day. In this particular case, 1% every day. I've been saying that for years. And so the reality is that you should always focus your attention to be a better person today than when you were yesterday. And just a little bit, in one area. It doesn't have to be in everything, every single day. But just try to find something. Like I've decided, for me personally, I think I was kind of sleeping when this happened, but that I wanted to memorize a bunch more quotes because I just like quotes, whether they're from movies or they're from famous people or from, ancient gurus. But I started off by thinking, I could memorize like 20 a day. And I'm thinking, well, that's a lot in a year. I don't think so. So I think I brought it down to like maybe doing 2 to 5 that I actually get and I can repeat and then just add that every day. A couple just nice little zingers that you can get, like work more on yourself than anything else, and you'll be successful, stuff like that. Mindset interventions. I want to talk a little bit about, what these things are and what this could be. So, cognitive behavioral therapy, again, is a way that can help. Again, I'm not advocating that that's what you need or spending your money to do that, but there's always the ability to find somebody to help you along this process. These days, if you're specifically looking at mindset growth, you might want to look more at a life coach. And so there's a lot more in that particular space than there are, say, full-on psychologists that want to work with people on their mindset. They tend not to work in that space as much, but they can. But I think a life coach is a good way to go. Learning a little bit more about mindfulness and meditation, sitting with yourself. And so even like this morning, I think I got up at like 5:30. I did my kind of normal routine. Then I went down, I did my calisthenics program. I came up, I took care of stuff. And then right before I went to work, I noticed I had like 14 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, my mind was everywhere because I'd already done all these other things. But it was very nice because it helped ground me to get me ready for the day in a positive way. Positive affirmations. Telling yourself you can. Because if you tell yourself you can't, you're going to be in that space too. Telling yourself you can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. That was the little engine that could, right? But in this particular instance, the example is something that you want to do. I am loved. I am loved. And sometimes we have a little bit of trouble with that. I know I have in the past. And that's, you have to have somebody really good to help you with that one. I mean, a friend, a spouse, things like that. But the idea of giving yourself this positive affirmation, sometimes writing it down is a great idea. I'm a huge fan of that. You write it down, especially if you're inspired one day and then the next day you forgot. Just write it down because you never want to leave the idea, you never want to leave the site of a good idea without taking an action towards its completion. I have said that numerous times, but that is very, very important because if you have an idea, do something about it at that moment. So in this case, either write it up on your phone, write it down or something, record it and come back to it. And then write this down and then every day read it. You got something? Let's see what you got.
So it's funny, I've worked on these are my manifestations, but I have our goal at our company, what I'd want our MRR or revenue numbers to be. I have some personal goals. I have some stuff that I want to, some numbers that I want to hit, but I just have this every single day. And it's really not only just for me to look at and cross my fingers and go, I hope. Every time I look at this, it directs me on the actions that I need to take today to create this reality tomorrow. So this is something I've taken from you.
So I'm gonna take that one step further, and I think that's great because I want to clarify something that's really important here, and it's not the goal. The goal and this isn't just from reading other books too, but the goal itself is not the thing. That's the icing on the cake. It's the process on how you got there. And if you've got your processes, or in this case, systems, but if you've got them aligned and you know what you're going to do and you repeat the actions every single day, you will reach the goal. Now, I do applaud you in the goal setting standpoint. From the goal setting standpoint, is that they have to be very specific and timely. They have to be measurable and that kind of stuff, SMART goals. But in this case, you say, when am I going to accomplish this? When am I going to accomplish that? And it gives you these targets to go for. I've said before, but if you have a car and a GPS, you don't set a destination, where do you go? You can drive around, but if you have a car and a GPS and you set the destination, does it mean you'll always get there? No. Car could break down, it could be bad weather, things could happen, but you still have the target.
Yeah.
But the process on how you do it is something that you get to keep for the other things that you might also do later on in life.
Yeah.
And so that's the key, what you're doing right there.
I've gotten wary at points to create goals because I've heard Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about the level of expectation and how that directly affects our happiness. So I used to have these audacious goals and be obsessed with this goal. And then if I didn't hit it, I'd feel less than, in a sense. But now I use my goals, and I've actually gotten away from time domain. Like, I need to get here at this point. I just have goals that if I can create a system, daily actions around, I know no matter what, if I just execute the system, I don't know when, I don't know at what point, I just know that it's more likely than not that I achieve it.
And the whole idea there is consistency.
It has to be.
That habit and doing it consistently will yield more success than other things. In terms of the growth mindset, though, and being a physician, I think that it's really important because a growth mindset in medicine is exceptionally important because you have better patient outcomes. You think more positively, they will be more positive. Your energy gets transferred to other people. They tend to have higher statistics when it comes to when people write stuff about them, either online and things like that. And so, but the healthcare system, I think, needs a little bit more of a growth mindset and not just a goal mindset, where it has to be a certain way. I think that's one thing that we've got some work to do. In terms of the psychological systems, it really comes down to beliefs. And in this particular instance, it's called schemas. And, in this instance, schemas, cognitive frameworks that help organize and interpret information. This is just kind of how you're thinking about stuff. But it's ultimately the beliefs that you have and self-efficacy, really working by this on things, so that you've got it straight. It's not like you working in a vacuum only, but, that you can actually think about doing it and how it's going to get done and that you're self-motivating. People often come up to me and they're like, yeah, I don't like exercise. It's kind of like an example of this person I was talking about. I don't really like exercise. I'm like, I don't motivate you. That's not my job. You need to learn. My job is to teach you how to become motivated for yourself. Because if you don't want it, I can't want it more than you want it. It's just not going to happen. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a reality check when people hear stuff like that, because they finally realize that, yeah, nobody's going to do it for me, so I have to do it myself. There's something called the attribution theory, and that actually has to do in fixed mindset people. They attribute their successes and failures to the traits that they have. I'm good, I'm bad, I'm smart, I'm a great athlete, whatever it is. Whereas the growth mindset people attribute it to the effort and the strategies that they come up with. So, for example, there are plenty of examples of football players and other athletes that were not necessarily the best. Tom Brady, all right, when he started. I mean, I can't tell you that he wasn't the best then, but he wasn't necessarily seen by the scouts as somebody who was very, very high up in the order in terms of the draft, so to speak. I forget what he was drafted, like 170 something or something.
199.
Like that. Whatever the number was. Obviously, he was great anyway. But somebody who has that growth mindset, which clearly he did, through extreme effort, working harder, strategies, being smart, nutrition, habits, focus, became the best ever. And literally, you could become the best ever at something that you'd like to do in your life. But you've got to make sure that you're putting in the effort, you're coming up with the strategies, you've got the systems in place to do it, and you're developing the habits. And so, we're looking at these things, and all I'm going to do is skip to two other parts because I want to touch on the neurology part of this. I talked a little bit about how this happens. You have to lay down these neural pathways. That's called neuroplasticity, where your brain can adapt. Well, believe it or not, growth mindset people can adapt so much better than fixed mindset people. There is a reward system, and I mentioned it. Dopamine is the reward. It just so happens that food, especially sugar, releases lots of dopamine. But the dopamine system is something that, is is a positive reward type system for yourself, but you can develop how it makes you feel by thinking bigger and broader, and not just so I have to do things a certain way, right? So you can be flexible. And then there's other parts of the brain that help you regulate that. The prefrontal cortex, which I talked about, conscious decision making, and really having ways to think through those processes. But it ultimately comes down to neuroplasticity and brain adaptation. And it takes time to do that, for those wires to occur, no matter what it is that you're going to do. Obviously, some of the things that can happen is, in education, this is where Dweck, really shined her research in education and understanding this growth mindset and changing things, but also in the workplace. Being open-minded, being positive, helping people work through things, not saying my way or the highway, is a growth mindset that takes a company from A to Z a lot faster. And so that is something that, can really, really help. Different characteristics of a growth mindset. Let me just go through 6 of these, because it's really important. Belief in development means that you believe that you can grow in ways in the future that you never thought of before. This is a growth mindset. Embracing challenges, like, bring it on. Give me something else to do. Let me grow. If I took a rubber band, right? I wish I had a rubber band in my hand, but we take a rubber band, it's kind of just like, loose, and you stretch it. What do you have besides a stretch rubber band?
Tension.
You have potential energy. You don't have energy. You have potential energy. The energy comes when you release it. And so embracing the challenges, forcing yourself to grow, really helps. Persistence when things happen bad. Listen, I already said the car could break down, things can happen, life goes wrong. Failure is a great way to grow and become a better person, unless you're a doctor. You don't want to fail your way up to the top in that one. But in most of the time, especially in business, failure is a way to learn. An effort to figure out your path to mastery is constant and never-ending learning, and making sure that you're open to criticism. That it's not just your way of thinking. And finally, become inspired by what other people have done. People have come before you. You can stand on the shoulders of giants. I mean, I have no problem with that. I'm not going to try to recreate the wheel. I just want to make sure that people know that the wheel is there and how to use it. And so some people have information and we can just share, and this is a great world and time where we can do that pretty easily. But learning from other people's success, I think, is great. What are some of the other benefits of a growth mindset? Because it's such an important topic. Increasing your motivation and achievements. Anything is possible. You have to believe to achieve. That was in that movie Annapolis. Very, very important.
I've had 2 major growth periods in my business career, and they just so happen to time up with my personal achievements. The first time I ran my first Spartan Ultra, our company was just getting started at the time. And after that, what I didn't think was possible, which was doing a Spartan Ultra, once I achieved that, all of a sudden I showed up to my work life and problems just seemed much smaller and they've seemed much more achievable. And I was able to, I have the analogy of like, we feel like life is like these concrete piles that just stand in front of us towards our goal. And once we realize that the concrete is actually styrofoam and all you have to do is ramp your head through each one of them, just with that determination, that belief that you can do it.
Conceptually, not really, by the way.
Don't do that at home. But the idea is every blockade that stands in your way is an illusion of how hard are you willing to just drive forward through it, in a sense. But I learned that through physical challenges. Physical challenges taught me that anything that I face in my business life is just the same thing. It's just, are you willing to go the distance?
Yeah, and in fact, when you get a brick wall in front of you, you can go through it, or you can stop and think about it and walk around it. So just saying. So increase in motivation, achievements, and resilience and adaptation is really what you were just talking about. So that was really good. And Other benefits include, how you learn, how fast you learn, what you can do, believing you can. It actually improves your overall mental health. It gives you a lot more consistency, and ultimately improves your relationships with people, especially with your significant other, in understanding and learning more about that. So how do you cultivate this? This is the real question. How do you make this happen? I mean, do you just sit in a room and I want to be healthy. I want to have you really want to begin to figure out ways that you can do it. So I'm going to give you nine ways that this will happen. Number 1, awareness and reflection. Be aware of what it is that you want. How are you going to do it? Understand your current mindset. Where are you? What are your limiting factors? What are your limiting beliefs? And begin to change them. Number 2, embracing the challenges. Understand they'll always come. Actively seek them out. What's next? What else can I do? How can I grow? If you do the same thing every day, yeah, you may get good at one thing, but you're not going to grow because something else will come up and all of a sudden, you'll be like, I don't know. The next one is extremely important, and it's your self-talk. How do you talk to yourself? Again, if you talk to me like you talk to yourself, would we be friends? Now, that's very, very important because a lot of times the answer is probably not. So whatever you think you can do, that's going to be the issue. Number 4, learning from failure. Don't view it as a failure. View it as a way to grow. Seeking feedback. Ask people for what they could do to help. Was this good? Was this not good? What can we change? Focusing on the effort and the process, but not necessarily the goal. Very, very important. Last ring. Number 7, seeking growth-oriented goals. Find things that will help you grow. 8, cultivate curiosity. Always think about, what does this mean? What else could it mean? How can I go? What else could I do better? Could I have improved? Why is this like this? One of the greatest things that we have today is the internet, that we can actually go on and you look up anything. When you don't know something, just look it up. You don't have to know it. Look it up. Learn it, know it, so you know it next time. And last, I've talked about this before, surround yourself with other growth-minded people. You become the average of the 5 people closest to you. But surround yourself with growth-minded people because the other people will want to get in your way and stop you from doing anything. And that has to do with education, in the workplace, in parenting, in personal development. It doesn't really matter. They're all of those places you are going to have the growth mindset, and you can see it. And so we've talked about a lot of stuff today in terms of looking at your habits and how they form and why they form and the growth mindset. But it's all really about just getting started, working through it, being consistent, smile on your face, get it done, and spread it with other people and share. So I'm Corey Howard. My pleasure. Hope to see you next time.